In reading John chapter 14 and 15 again, I've just been struck by the mystery and the beauty and just the wonder of the person of Jesus. What we're given in John 14 and 15 and continuing is a really up close and intimate disclosure of his life, in a way his inner life, his relationship with the Father, his union with God the Father, and his own personhood as a human being, and unpacking that in sometimes cryptic and sometimes very specific ways with the disciples. The part that really gripped me the most was the fact that Jesus says, "The Father and I are one. If you've seen me, you've seen the Father." So what he's saying is that his humanity, his physicality, his humanness is perfectly compatible with his divinity. There's not a collision there, there's not tension there. There seems to be a beautiful harmonious bringing together of humanity and divinity in the life of Jesus. Now this also brings with it this, I guess you could say, intellectual challenge of how do we get our minds around understanding the simplicity of God. In other words, that God is unified, he is whole, he is complete, he is indivisible. There is no periphery or center to God. The fullness of God is all of God, and God fills all things. And so the doctrine of divine simplicity offers to us a vision of God that is indivisible, non-compartmentalized, and completely whole. And yet, within this wholeness, within this indivisible life that is the life of God, there is diversity within the personhood of the Father and the Son and the Spirit, and the Son even having humanity, being a human being. That's the mystery of the Incarnation, and we're struck with it again, I think, in John chapters 14 and 15. In John 15, Jesus says, "I am the vine, and you are the branches. My Father is the gardener." So there's this distinction between the role and life of the Son and the role and life of the Father and God's people, and yet there is this call to union, to be enfolded into the life of God, into the Father through the Son by the Spirit. So really you could meditate probably for years and still have so much more to learn when we come to these extraordinary teachings of Jesus' self and inner life. The other thought that I just want to leave us with is that when we see Jesus, we see the one person in history who is the most human. His humanity is at its highest and its most perfect and its most revealed, whereas our humanity, there's a hiddenness, and we are somewhat diminished because there's sin in us and amongst us, which is not true of Jesus. If you think about sin as being the deprivation of the good, so we are created for goodness, because remember, when we are created in Genesis 1, God looks at us and looks at humanity and says, it's very good. Our humanity is very good, and yet sin is a deprivation of the good. And so it is expressed in a million awful ways, all of which reduce our humanity. They deprive of us of our humanity. They limit and stunt our humanity, whereas Jesus has a fully expressed, fully realized, delightful humanity. And so the way for us to become more godly is to become more human. Our humanity doesn't take us away from God. Our humanity actually moves us into God and toward God. So to become more human, to be more ourselves, is actually the way in which we become more holy, more spiritual, more completely people of faith. Obviously not according to the flesh, but Romans 8, according to the Spirit. And as we live according to the Spirit, then our humanity flourishes. We become more alive, more godly, more the person that we were always created to be, more reflective of the image of God, because Jesus really is the true living image of the Father. He tells us that. And so we are also created in the image of God, but we are broken, we are cracked and crooked people. But in Christ, as we are being sanctified, our humanity is more realized. We become more alive, more joyful, more complete, more free, more brave, more right in the way that we live and respond to God and circumstance. So there's so much more to delve into. There's a little glimpse of John 14:15 and some of the treasure that's buried there. So I'd encourage you to get into it yourselves, and we'll check in with each other again soon. Till next time, peace.